And Jane, you've expressed an interest in the No Child Left Behind law. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I know a couple of things firsthand. Number one, a lot of people don't realize that the No Child Left Behind Act includes a law that unless the high schools, the public high schools, allow military recruiters into their schools any which way they like, they won't get any public funding from any federal funding. And so all the schools allow the military in because they need the money. My daughter, Sally, is a teacher in a small two-room schoolhouse down in Wyndham. And she's seen what happened to these little kids. She teaches kindergarten 1, 2, 3 all together. And they have to go. They have to have certain numbers of tests. And I just used the example of one little girl who in the first grade was having a really bad time learning to read, and she had some behavior problems. And so Sally worked with her and got her reading pretty well. And then she had to take one of these tests. And she stopped reading completely, and they had to start all over again because it frightened her so. And the tests are so disruptive, the teachers can't go and pay individual attention as she likes to do, and probably most teachers like to do. The other thing, it seems to me, is that in all these tests, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like the schools that do the worst, like the inner city schools, the ones that really need help, if they do badly, they don't get it. The money goes to the schools that do better.
Right.
And then they say, oh, well, you can have a voucher or something and go to a little private for money school or something, the profit. Here comes the end of our public school system, which is probably the last bit of democracy we've got, is that everybody can get an education, if they can't get in it. And I know the public school system is probably staggering, but we have to have it. If we have all private schools, there's going to be very high illiteracy. We're going to go back hundreds of years without the public school system. So,
one of the reasons we don't have sufficient funds to finance it, forget about stepping away from the war, is because our taxes are used to finance private education. And I noticed a headline in the Free Press within the past couple of days about the endowment of the university being frozen momentarily. Well, how come they're not paying taxes on the income from that endowment? Why do we pay more taxes so that the university doesn't have to pay taxes? And that's not just true of the university, that's true of all the private schools, and we end up financing them by having to pay higher taxes to support public education because they get a tax break. Why should they get a tax break? Why should churches get a tax break? Why should there be such thing as foundation where rich people can stock their money in a propaganda system and not pay taxes on the income and pay monstrous salaries to the people who are in it? I think we're ready for socialism.
I do too.
There's a recent book that I read, Unconventional Success by Swenson. He manages the Yale University Endowment Fund, and for the past 20 years, I think, he's gotten 16% return on the endowment. Imagine 16% return, and most of us, when our retirement fund, do we come anywhere close to that? No, we don't.
And they don't pay taxes on that money.
That's right.
Make as much as you want. Capitalism is capitalism, and as long as we've got it, make it all. But you should pay taxes on the income, and you shouldn't be able to pay yourself exorbitant salaries. That's true of lots of nonprofit corporations, including places like some of the radio stations and television stations that call themselves public, and I call them petroleum, National Petroleum Radio, National Petroleum Television. Those folks pay very high salaries, and they don't pay any interest. They don't pay any taxes on their income, and why shouldn't they pay taxes on it? Everybody else has to pay taxes? Why are they exempt?
Isn't that what they call socialism for the rich?
Yes,
We're getting
it
screwed
is.
3 ways, as I see it. They're making more money than we are in the first place. They don't pay any taxes like we pay, and they get exorbitant salaries, which we don't get.
Yeah.
It's called lemon socialism.
Lemon socialism.
Lemon socialism, yeah, where the profits are privatized and the losses are socialized. We have socialism for the losses, and capital, we have private enterprise for the profits. That is clearly seen in the bailout. I mean, that,
Yes.
there's the monster, all right there in the living room. And the people of this country just buy it. Hey, if I can sell you on the belief that there's that old guy up there watching over your genitals, then I can sell you anything.
And we were talking about the No Child Left Behind Act. Isn't there a clause in that act which allows military recruiters, or requires that military recruiters go into the schools?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, maybe, but I thought it was the other way around, that the schools are threatened unless they
Right.
let them.
They have to let them in.
They have to let them in, otherwise they won't get federal funding. The schools. Well,
That's
it's
part
the
of the
same
No
thing.
Child Left Behind.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Yeah.
part of the act.
Yeah. So this is forcing the schools to take the military recruiters.
Yeah.
And so they're encouraging the children to enlist in the army.
Of course.
But I wonder how much do they tell them about the contract they're going to sign?
I do.
Well, you do.
Yeah, the recruiters
Yeah, the
don't.
recruiters
No,
don't.
they
No,
don't.
the contract, which in very small print, it says in the back that this contract can be broken any way that the
government
government
wants,
sees fit to change it. And the kids don't realize that. And when they go in, they're told that they can pick any job they want, and suddenly they're in Iraq. And then they come home because they're only supposed to stay a certain number of months, but they're needed again, so they break the contract and they're sent back over and over again, even with brain damage, or they give them some pills to get, and send them back again. The
Yeah,
suicide rate is really high. How do we get there?
I propose that we, in Vermont, I'm just,
Yeah.
as a governor candidate, that I would call on the legislature to end the National Guard in Vermont so that the federal government can't come and Shanghai the residents of Vermont, regardless of age, and it's not just young people who get shanghaied, but Shanghai them for imperial wars around the world. But I have no problem about subsidizing a real citizens militia, not a state. We used to call it the state militia before it became the National Guard. I don't want to finance a state militia or a National Guard. I'm willing to put some money, or see the people of the state of Vermont put a little money into helping to finance a citizen militia that's there to defend us and our state, and to be available in emergencies and flood and fire and things of that sort. But I'm not willing to let Vermonters be used as cannon fodder in imperial wars. And I would ask the legislature to get rid of the National Guard.
That sounds a little like what the NRA is recommending. Are you a member of the NRA?
I was,
Yes.
and I still, I'm even more radical than the NRA. They ask all these little questions and details. I say that the people of the United States are entitled to have the same weapons as the government, according to the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. And until the government disarms itself, we have to be armed equally, equal to the government, with the exception of those prohibited by international law, which would be nuclear weapons. But otherwise, the citizenry should be armed. And I tie the First and Second Amendment together. The First Amendment is not really about protecting the rights of speakers and writers, that is, the speech and press. That's not what it's really about. It's really about making sure that the listeners and the readers have access to the ideas expressed by the speakers and the writers. It's about protecting the community's rights to knowledge, and that comes straight. I mean, those people were greatly influenced by John Stuart Mill, and I may not have the quote exactly right, but it goes something like, "The silencing of an opinion robs the whole human race." Now, you silence the opinion, but that's only one person that's being affected. What you do when you silence the opinion is you're depriving the whole human race of the opportunity to share, to hear those thoughts or read those thoughts. And it doesn't just happen with, you know, Wilhelm Reich stuff was burned by the United States government, his books and papers. Right? He was in prison. I think it was either the FDA or the Federal Trade Commission. I don't remember which. We have book burnings in the United States equal to the worst in the world. We still do it. That happens. I mean, if freedom of speech doesn't apply, for instance,